Hello, 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 everybody. Jump. Maybe not with your plates on your lap. Maybe don't jump. Welcome to this masterclass on public speaking. And I'm super excited to be here on stage in a second with my friend and collaborator, Bill Britten. But before we get there, let me do a few things. You're here, despite lunch, you skipped the networking. Obviously, you're interested on stepping up your game in presenting. Anybody of you have seen Mad Men? Hands up. Amen. Don Draper. One of the quotes I love, he says, success comes from standing out, not from fitting in. And some of the things we're going to talk about is how can you stand out better. You all present a lot in your day-to-day job, sometimes on stage, sometimes in front of a camera. So we're going to try to get you from good to great, maybe even to outstanding. That's why you're here. Good. I'm not the star here today. There's another star here. He used to be 15 years behind the camera, movie director for BBC, Sky, ITV, and many others. He's now working as an influencing skills coach, one of the leading ones in the UK. And big applause, please, for Bill Britten.
Hi.
Thank you.
Are we sitting down or are we standing up?
We're sitting down.
Yeah.
So, Bill, excited to be here with you. Influencing skills coach. That's the title you have on LinkedIn.
Yes.
Fancy title.
Yes.
What is it about? Tell me, what do you do? Tell the audience.
What I do is I work with clients to help them essentially communicate better and have influence with human beings when they interact. So what it isn't is sort of corporate communication strategy and so on. It's very much about individual human beings speaking to and influencing other human beings. So it's things like public speaking, leadership, team dynamics, facilitation skills. And it does very much come from the work I used to do as a TV and film director, because one of the things you realize when you work with, particularly with really good actors, is that apparently tiny changes in the way that they speak or move or use their voices or their hands can radically change what it is that is being communicated, and therefore the relationship and the degree of influence. So that's very much where my work originates.
So the audience is here obviously to learn a bit about stage presence, how to present better. What are some of the key things underlying that? What means better? Where do we start?
Well, my first degree was actually in psychology, and I am a bit of a psychology research nerd. So I'm a big fan of Daniel Kahneman, who some of you may know from his book, Thinking Fast and Slow. And his kind of lifetime's research essentially demonstrates that the unconscious has a huge impact on our decision making. There are just so many things going on that we are not conscious of in our brains, which lead us to make decisions about people and judgments we need to make and so on. And there's a couple of pieces of research that I think are particularly relevant to particularly this thing about the first impression. One was research done back in the 60s and 70s about the relative significance of what we say, how we say it, as in the voice, the pitch, the tone, the pace, the pausing, the intonation, and all the vocal qualities. And then thirdly, the visuals. So body language, facial expression, gestures, posture, all of those things. And the research that was done then suggested that this is actually how it breaks down. And I should emphasize that this is not about content. This is just about attitude and emotion. And of course, that includes judgments about people, trustworthiness, those kind of things. So if I were to say to Andy, I am super excited to be here today, that says one thing. Whereas if I say, yeah, Andy, I'm super excited to be here today, that says something quite different. And the words are exactly the same, but the body language and the voice is doing something different. And there was some very interesting research done a couple of years ago at UCL in London by a researcher who took some video footage of entrepreneurs pitching to investors. And she showed 10-second clips of this to 3 groups of subjects. The first group saw only the visuals, so they didn't hear anything. Second group heard the sound but didn't see anything. And the third group saw and heard it all. 10 seconds, that's all they had.
So we want to do a little pause. So so there's Shark Tank setting, startups pitching to investors. And what the question was...
can you predict who would get the investment money?
Who do you think got the money? So I want to hear from you. Do you think by watching 10 seconds video, or visuals only, there was a group that just saw the video, no sound, no clue what they were talking about. Second group was sound only, didn't see the guys. And the third group was visuals and sound. Okay? So who was best in predicting who got the money? Who thinks it was the visuals only? Hands up. Okay. Who thinks it was sound only? That's less. And who thinks it's visual and sound? That's the majority. The right answer was revealed in a Harvard Business Review article that I couldn't have told you the name before. And it was, in entrepreneurial pitches, stage presence is everything. So the group who just saw the video had no clue about what was by far the best in predicting who won the money. A bit strange, right? Because they asked the investors, why did you choose these guys? And it was, fantastic background, they have patents, they have the right advisor, super well connected, unique technology. But if somebody, just by watching video without knowing is this a nail studio or rocket science, can predict, something happens in the back of you, Mr. Investor, that you're not even aware of, which you just mentioned. So, that's setting the stage. Stage presence may be everything. What are we going to talk about, Bill, in the next 32 minutes?
Yeah, so 3 things. Actually, just so that you're aware of this, the sound only were below chance. So the people who didn't have the visuals were actually worse than chance at predicting who would get the money. 3 things I wanted to look at. The first is nerves. Everybody gets nerves. How do you deal with the nerves? Second is, what do you do in the opening 10 seconds? And this is why I wanted us to sit down initially, so that we get moments of showing you, well, what happens if you stand up? It changes the dynamic, as Andy has just done then. And the third is, I'm going to offer you a structure to use at the beginning to position yourself and what you have to offer. So starting with nerves.
Yeah. Do you get nervous?
Yeah. Yeah.
You get nervous?
Yeah, I've had butterflies all morning. I've still got them, actually. I can feel my palms are a bit sweaty. My heart's beating a bit faster than normal.
How do you deal with it?
Well, I'm going to ask you that question. You do this a lot, right? You get nervous? What do you do to manage your nerves?
So one of the things is this. Mm-hmm. I prepare. I rehearse. I spent, before coming here Sunday night, I was in my bed. I had 5 panels, including this one here. So I have 5 packs of these, and of course I rehearse, I record myself, I rehearse and I tweak and I rehearse until I'm happy. And just before I walk, I'm not sitting down, I move, physical.
Yeah, me too. I went for a walk around Broadgate Circle about 45 minutes ago.
Yeah, 2 minutes before he was not here. He was
yeah, my timing is good. Huh? So there are 3 things, I think, 3 ways in which professional actors deal with nerves, because it's part of the territory. This is Judi Dench on the subject.
M.
So there is something in accepting that you are going to be nervous. It may not be fun, but it goes with the territory. And every professional performer, actors, musicians, athletes, politicians, anybody who gets up on any kind of stage is going to feel nervous. And the professionals are only worried if they are not nervous. I've even heard Mick Jagger talking about being nervous. And I find Mick Jagger and nerves difficult to put together. But he's quite open about it. So the first thing that the pros do, essentially, this is the ambition, by the way. Everybody gets butterflies, right? The ambition is to get them flying in formation. Accept them and welcome them. Actually just say, good, I'm nervous. That's the way it should be. This is my petrol. This is my fuel. Because adrenaline is energy. This is your body saying to you, this is a special moment. You need some energy. Fortunately, there are no tigers in this part of the world to run away from, or hopefully nobody to fight, but that's where it comes from. It's energy. The second thing is to prepare yourself. Now, Andy and I just talked about we walk. There are two benefits to movement. One is that is what adrenaline is for. The worst thing you can do on a body full of adrenaline is most people's preparation, which is this. That is absolutely not what adrenaline is for. So there's something about getting up, moving around. That's what it's for. But you're also, by doing that, you are preparing the equipment you are going to be using. That pie chart, as it suggested, what you're doing physically is a huge part of your communication. And similarly, the voice. Actually, you need to warm up the voice. Get it working. Tongue twisters are a great way of doing that. I'm going to ask you all to do a tongue twister. It goes the lips, the teeth, and the tip of the tongue. Could you just say that? But you should exaggerate. And if you do not feel silly, you're not doing this properly. Okay? The lips, the teeth, and the tip of the tongue. A bit louder. The lips, the teeth, and the tip of the tongue. And a bit more exaggeration. The lips, the teeth, and the tip of the tongue. Good. All that's doing is warming up the musculature that you're going to be using. But it will also give the adrenaline something to do, even if you're sitting down. And the third thing, possibly the most important thing, is that. Because one of the things that adrenaline does is it suppresses the breathing so that you take little sips of air. You don't fill your lungs properly. And then all sorts of other things happen. Your voice changes, your prefrontal cortex doesn't get enough oxygen, and not nice things can happen as a result. So breathing and taking control of your breathing is a really significant part of this preparation process. And that is something you can do if you're in a panel, waiting. You can take control of your breathing. So I'm going to ask everybody to do a breathing exercise with me. Before we do it, can you just put your attention on your body and just notice, how do you feel? Just clock the sensations you're experiencing as you sit there. And then we're going to do what's called box breathing. So if you could get to your feet, because this is done better on your feet. All I'm going to ask you to do is breathe in for 3, hold for 3, out for 3, hold for 3, and then we'll go on. So first of all, can everybody breathe in, 2, 3, hold, 2, 3, out, 2, 3, hold, 2, 3. In, 2, 3, hold, 2, 3, out, 2, 3, hold, 2, 3. And now to 4. In, 2, 3, 4, hold, 2, 3, 4, out, 2, 3, 4, hold, 2, 3, 4. And just breathe as you wish and have a seat. And just notice, has that changed your experience of being in your skin? Because for most people, it actually just gives you a greater sense of control of what is happening. It calms most people because the adrenaline is running you, and the ambition, remember, is to get the butterflies flying in formation. So it puts you back in control. Now, none of those 3 are a silver bullet, but they are part of what professionals do to manage the nerves so that they're harnessed rather than you feel out of control and they're running you.
And of course, there are many more exercises you can do, and we run workshops for Deutsche Telekom, Vodafone. Some of the people have enjoyed longer sessions with Bill, and we will look silly on camera, and we're having fun, and there's, of course, a lot more. Today we're scratching a bit the surface.
Yeah. So, second thing we're going to look at is the opening 10 seconds. Actually, before I talk to you about the highway code of presenting, has everybody had that experience of you meet somebody, perhaps at an event like this or a party, and they tell you their name, and you tell them your name, and you smile, and you shake hands, and you say hello, and then you think, I don't know what your name is. And it's about 4 seconds since you told me your name, and I've already forgotten it. That is because when we first meet somebody, we are not really listening to what they say. We are drinking in the human being. What are they like? Are they friendly? Are they trustworthy? Are they intelligent? Am I going to enjoy this conversation? And even with people who know you, you're picking up signals. This is system 1 for those of you who are familiar with Kahneman's work. What kind of mood are they in? What message is this going to be about? And so on. You're not really paying attention. And that's why I think the first 10 seconds is absolutely crucial in establishing yourself as having authority and conviction. And unfortunately, it's a collision with your nerves. Because for most people, that is the high point of nerves, and it's also the moment when the audience basically decides to go, oh, or no.
So after working with Bill for a while, I changed the way I do my openings in any of the events. So normally you see a lot of, well, you go on stage and say, hello, my name is Andy. Yeah? Or some people I saw at this conference don't even tell their name at all. So what I do is I go on stage, I say, hello, we're going to do this, da-da-da-da-da-da. And by the way, my name is, and that's 20 seconds into the game. So you have time to see who is this guy on stage, and then you will be able to listen and understand and digest.
Yeah. So back to what happens before you say your name. And that's not a must, by the way, that's just a technique, but it works. So the highway code of presenting. What I'm going to suggest to you, move that out of the way, is that the first thing you should do when you get to wherever it is stop. Just take a moment, be there, arrive. Secondly, look, see who's in the room, see what it is, maybe listen. Is there anything happening that I need to know about? Are people still talking? Is there a man with a drill just outside and I need to speak louder? And thirdly, breathe. Take a breath in. And then you go. And to give you an illustration of this is, I've seen many, many presentations like you, probably like you have, that begin like this. Yeah, hi, thanks very much for having me. I've got a number of slides, in fact, I've got a lot of slides to get through, so I'm going to start straight away. And the first thing you get is rush and confusion. And actually, to be honest, the hello probably felt like a lie. You know, when somebody says, morning, that is not a greeting. That is somebody who is using the word morning because that's what they have to say. And it's a very different experience to somebody who actually says hello and they mean it. They mean it. So, to give you an example of this is what I'm advocating. Hi, my name is Bill Britten, and I am going to be talking to you about whatever it may be. And hopefully in that you got a very different experience of somebody who's pleased to be there, who's genuinely saying hello, who is confident that he's bringing something of value. Would anybody like to have a go at this? The opening 5 seconds, you don't need to tell us anything other than your name. Great, thank you. What is your name?
Quentin.
Quentin. So, can we give a round of applause to Quentin for volunteering? So, Quentin, what I'm going to suggest, why don't you come from sitting down? The stage is yours. Stop, take a moment, look, listen, breathe. And can you actually then just say some kind of greeting and tell us your name? That's it.
Here's Quentin.
Hi everyone, my name is Quentin, and that's all I have to say.
Great. Thank you, Quentin. Now, obviously, the applause at the beginning forced him to stop, but I hope and think you saw what I did, which is that nonetheless, the guy seemed pleased to be here. And I would then probably be leaning forward, going, okay, well, yeah, I'm curious to know what you have to offer me. Quentin. And it's a very different experience to that rush that you get from a lot of people. So thank you very much. Yeah, third thing I wanted to look at was the structure, as I referenced. And I have a very simple structure that I think can help you shape maybe the first 60 seconds or so to get you up and running. Because, as I said, that for most people, the first 10 seconds is the high point of nerves. But you do also need to say something. It's not that the audience is not listening to anything you say. Clearly, the content is what you're there to offer them. Well, it's part of what you're there to offer them. So really simple structure, and I'm then going to ask everybody just to figure out their own, and nobody else is going to come up on stage unless they desperately want to, but I'll try and find a way of you practicing and using it. So it's called the ABCD, and the A stands for attention. Something that will get their attention. Andy's already referenced the fact that people aren't really hearing it unless it's something arresting. I'll tell you what is not arresting. I would like to give you a brief overview of ... That is not something that makes most people go, oh, goody, a brief overview. That's just what I wanted. Personally, I will die happy if I never hear another brief overview. So you need something that will get the audience's attention. Something surprising, or a question, or a joke, or something that is just slightly out of what they're expecting. The B is for benefit. Having got their attention, if you do not persuade them that they will get benefit from listening to you, you will lose them again. So you have to give them some indication of this is why you will get benefit from hearing what I have to say. The C is your credentials. Why are you qualified to talk about this subject? And then the D is some sense of direction, an agenda or an outline of roughly what you're going to say. So, for the beginning of this, what I might do is come up here and say, in the first 10 seconds of your presentation, your audience makes a decision about whether or not to pay attention. Over the next 30 minutes, I am going to offer you some really practical techniques that you can use to make sure that you create impact. I've been doing this work for about 20 years with my clients, but prior to that, I was a film and television director. So looking at really small changes that actors make that hugely influence what is being communicated. And there are three things in particular I'm going to look at. The first is, how do you deal with nerves? The second is the crucial opening 10 seconds. And the third is a structure for your first minute or so. So that's my ABCD. Andy did an ABCD when he first started. Do you want to just remind us what it was?
Can we play the music again?
Oh. That's the attention grabber.
You might have seen that, I twisted a bit the arms of the AV crew and of Sam. Thank you for being bold enough to do it, Sam. Said, I want walk on stage music. We're in entertainment business. Please, everyone gets walk on stage music, right? So that was attention one. And maybe next year everybody will have walk on stage music, who knows, right? And I let my panelists choose their own, and they had a message for it. So that was attention one. Then the unusual question was, anybody seen Mad Men? Right? If you remember, I'm not doing it again, but you remember I asked you. And that was the other attention. Benefits, you're here to get your game from good to great to outstanding. That's why you're here. You're skipping lunch, you're skipping networking to be here. So obviously you have interest. That's why. And credentials, well, there is this guy who has been a movie director, and he knows his shit, and he's an influencing skills coach, one of the leading of the UK. And we work together since a few years for clients like Vodafone, Deutsche Telekom, Magenta, and others. What are you going to hear? Nerves, first 10 seconds, and a structure. That was my A, B, C, D. Although the D direction came a bit better later, you did that. Yeah.
Great, thank you. So I hope that makes sense intellectually. I'd like you to have a chance to do this. So could you take the next couple of minutes just to plan out, think of a meeting or a presentation you might have to give, or a meeting where it's really important that you get your message across. And just figure out I would encourage you to write it down, because there is a truism that nobody can remember more than 3 things. And it's really true, particularly when you're under pressure on your public speaking. If you have 4 things to remember, it's really tough. So if you have something to write it with, or you've got a device, you can, but just plan out. And then what you're going to do is try it on the person sitting next to you. So you're going to each have a go at speaking this. But I think, first of all, a couple of minutes of, it'll be more or less silent unless people decide to do it at the top of their voices, but I would discourage that. So we'll have a couple of minutes of silence just while you figure out what's your A, your B, your C, and your D. Not a brief overview or a short update.
So the idea, of course, of having you try that is, if this is a lecture, you say, oh, nice, you go out and you forget. So it's important to rehearse, rehearse, rehearse. So find your A, B, C, D for a little non-overview, and then you're going to give that to your neighbor. And how many times, what do you say, 5 minutes?
Just once. But I think what we need
No,
now,
how many times should they take to prepare?
I'm timing it. From now on, you've got 2 minutes of silence. Okay, time is up. So if you could pause those conversations, please. Okay, pause those conversations, please. By all means, carry them on afterwards. One of the reasons I was very keen for you to practice it is that it's in the nature of these things that you can hear it and understand it, but it doesn't actually happen when you're under pressure until you have rehearsed it. So Andy's point about him rehearsing, getting together with his panelists and so on and talking it through, is a huge difference between sitting at your desk mumbling under your breath. So part of the whole, I think, way in which we approve is just to practice out loud, sometimes in front of the dog, you know, a creature of some sort. But in the same way, I knew this was much more likely to land with you if you had an opportunity to do it and practice it, even if that was very rushed.
And when I prepared the panels here, I, of course, did a prep talk with my panelists. I said, this is what we're going to do. They know the structure. I'm going to call you on stage. You have your song. I'm going to introduce you. Can you please say a few words about Vodafone and Alente? And they know what's coming. So they can feel calm and at ease, because that's how I want my panelists to feel, and others might take a different approach. Right, Tommy?
There we go. So those are the 3 things that we were planning to look at. We have time for some questions, if anybody.
Yeah, so nerves, the first 10 seconds, content, you got to practice a bit the ABCD. Any questions? Yes, here. Do we have a microphone? Microphone is easier. Save your voice.
Thank you. Hi, I'm Rupen from ThinkBox. I spend a lot of time presenting to advertisers, our research. Prior to the pandemic, that would have all been in person. Increasingly with advertising hybrid working, it's often on a Zoom screen, Teams. So that highway code where you sort of come up, you pause, take everything in, how do you do that in a virtual environment? Because often, you might get introduced, but then you'll have people that join the call, you'll have people that have their videos off, you've got a whole range of things going on. How's the best way to do that in a virtual environment?
So there are I think there's several things tied up in what you just described, obviously. Yeah, there is no necessarily a moment of take the stage, own the space, but there is still something quite strong about the hello. And there are lots of minutiae about eye contact and where do you look and how do you, my general advice, again, this is quite a rich subject. Andy and I are actually running a workshop tomorrow about this very subject. But my general advice is look at the person who is closest to the camera. Because the nearer your eyes are to the camera, the more it feels like eye contact. If you have a second screen, it's a disaster, because it's like me sitting there going, morning, everybody. How are you? Well, I'm going to be, and some part of your brain is going, why is he looking over there? Hello. So there's something about where you look. There is also definitely a lot of the stuff about speed, particularly pace. People often speak too quickly, and particularly when they are nervous and under pressure. And for a native speaking audience, if it's their native language, that's difficult enough. But if people are in a second language, and I work a lot with people who are speaking English as a second language, and it is Andy's second, that becomes even more important to slow it down. And here's the difficult thing, without losing energy. So actually, and I'm not directly answering your question because I don't think there is a direct answer, but there are a lot of adjustments I think you do need to make online in order to have that kind of impact. And it goes into things like, what's your chair like? How are you sitting? Et cetera, et cetera.
And lighting.
Yeah.
So I would say, success comes from standing out. Tell me about great quality, but yet the camera is there, you're not looking, you have bad lights, a virtual background, and half of your head disappears. I don't believe what you say. You might win Emmy Awards for video quality. I'm not seeing it. Do something about it. That's what we work a lot on.
And do you find, sorry, I'm going to ask another couple of questions. Do you find...
Would you mind, because I can see my friend Brendan at the back. Okay, go ahead. We've got 3 minutes left.
Right, sorry. I was going to say, standing up versus sitting down,
Yeah.
does that generally work better for virtual presentations in terms of your own energy and so on? And I'll leave it at that question.
Could everybody close their eyes? Everybody just close your eyes and listen to the timbre of my voice. So I'm now slouching in my chair, and you can hear that I can't breathe properly. And if you slouch in your chair, so get your bum all the way forward, and then try and take a deep breath, you can't. And you can hear that reflected in the voice, because there's no oxygen. And the minute that I stand up, the whole timbre of my voice changes. And you can open your eyes now. So actually, whether you're standing or sitting does make a difference. And people don't necessarily go, oh, even if they're not seeing you, they don't necessarily go, oh, she's standing up. But they do hear something different in the voice. So actually, how you arrange that, I think, does have quite a big impact.
But if you're on camera and you're then always like this, and then it's distracting. Same as if you have the swiveling chair and people go, you see them all the time, right? It's like, okay, you don't have a lot of credibility, right? You're nervous.
Can we let
Brendan
had a question?
Just to follow up on that question, that practicing with the tools is really important too. There's so many features that we don't use in all of those online, sharing content in different ways. The more you play with them, the more you'll learn. So that's something that
Absolutely.
I've done. The question was actually about questions, what we're doing now at the end of the presentation. How to handle difficult questions, if that's not too difficult a question.
So again, there's no magic bullet with this, but I think one thing is obviously be polite. Let the questioner finish the question. If you trigger something in you and you want to jump in while they haven't finished speaking, you will just create a dynamic which is not helpful to anybody. I think you do have to try and engage with it, but I think a crucial thing to do, especially in a live audience, is take the difficult question. If Brendan had just asked me a question, perhaps even with some hostility in it, I begin talking to Brendan and I expand it to everybody else, and I continue to speak on a subject that Brendan has nominated to everybody, and I check in occasionally with him, but I have opened it up to everybody. Now, first of all, that helps everybody else feel included, but secondly, it robs Brendan, aggressive Brendan, which I'm struggling to imagine, but there probably is one, of the ability to get into a dialogue. Because if I only talk to Brendan, and then he's going to ask a follow-up, and I'm now in a difficult one-to-one conversation, and you guys are all witnessing a one-to-one. And the oxygen of eye contact means that actually I can just diminish the likelihood of you getting into an argument, if that's what you're after. But I think what doesn't work is to sidestep it, or pretend you haven't been asked it, or fob people off. And occasionally it's worth saying, can I just check, is this a subject that's of interest to everybody else? Because if it is, then obviously we should talk about it, but if it's something that is a particular bugbear of yours, Brendan, you and I could discuss it later. It's very different to going, let's take this offline. So I think it's partly about respecting the rest of the audience.
Thank you, Bill.
We have minus 13 seconds.
We're going to take one more.
Hi.
1 second, can you get the microphone? Eloise.
I'm Eloise from Ovio. As a new salesperson, I'm currently in my first sales role. What advice would you give for altering that opening structure for a first initial sales meeting?
I don't think I have an answer to that question. Do you mean you've been given a structure that you're supposed to use and you're wondering how to adapt it? Or?
No, I mean like that opening 10 seconds
Yeah.
and the opening structure that you offered where we prepared that little
Yeah.
bit. Within an initial sales meeting, because so much is relying on reading what the other person is thinking about every step of what you say and altering what you say based on that, how do you advise reading those situations and doing that opening pitch?
Yeah. Just so we're clear, I am not an expert in sales process, so you may well have access to some of that. But it seems to me that the first part of anything is relationship building. It's if there is small talk, it's that. It's being sincere. It's genuinely caring. And the words of Stephen Covey: seek first to understand, then to be understood. So actually, when I'm selling, I'm trying to find out what is it you want to achieve. What's your difficulty? Where's your pain? So I can adapt what I'm going to talk about. So I know I'm talking to your issues. That I doubt that's new.
Definitely no slides.
Good point.
Yeah, PowerPoint is not. I think is often badly used, and what you get is the pack that you should be sent afterwards, and then people stick it up there, and it just doesn't create a relationship.
Thank you.
So you realize we could talk on for hours, and that's what we do together sometimes. So Bill instructs, I act as a coach, especially if it's for online. There's a whole can of worms on gear. What is the right light? Where's the camera placement? Not in front of a window, but there's something that seems sticking out of your head. But that's something we do. You mentioned it tomorrow with a client online. They're on the US West Coast. They have a panel. They want to prep their panelists to look great because they invest in that. And yeah, you do that, and then like some of the speakers here, they invest to be speaking. So, well, maybe you invest and make sure that it's worthwhile, the money you spent. So if anybody of you is interested, that's a bit of advertising in our own sense. To learn more, find Bill, myself. We do this. You do this as a living. I do it sometimes.
Yeah.
Out of fun. Good. Thank you for being here. Big applause for Bill.